of community, she reached out and wanted to know how to be more part of this programming course. So truly from sort of like a consumer to contributor, she's been working and learning more about Zowe and COBOL Check, and now is our mentor for the summer mentorship program, mentoring our mentee, Ashish, who I see is on the call here today, listening in, very exciting. So with that, Lezlie, please go ahead and introduce yourself and let's kick off this conversation with you.
Well, hello, everybody. I am so glad that we're no longer living in technological silos. I come from the silo area where we really didn't reach out and talk. We didn't talk to each other, and we definitely didn't talk to other companies. And this is providing COBOL for the world. We have found out it is easier, it is more efficient, it is more economical if we share our ideas. We, for many years, that's the way he taught me, we reinvented the wheel over and over again. I can't tell you how many times I started off with a paragraph that redirect. Come on now, everybody has that in the beginning of their code. Why wasn't that just a utility? But for years, it just was something we did. And the only thing we didn't follow through on is making sure we commented a lot of that code. And I am also a veteran of Y2K. So I have been duly punished for not writing comments in code. And JCL and all that, and saying, what is this? And then having to read it again. My journey started just being taken out of a math class. Okay, everybody hold on, in the 60s, okay? I know, and nobody do the math on that, okay? I just had a birthday. But I remember learning Fortran 66, and I thought it was, just kind of something scientific. I didn't think anyone would use it for anything useful because we had, at that point, we had rooms full of people that did the same thing that a piece of code does. I've even worked in one of those rooms where we all had 10 key calculators and we recalculated financial statements for a major company. I won't say who was doing this, for major companies' pension plans. So I came to the part of technology where we had to prove to business and everyone that this was viable. And I want to say it was years before we were conversational, where we would talk about what we did. But once it got out there and we found, I see now all this energy in the communities and all the sharing and the thinking. And this side note, I even see how much CPU time things like COBOL Check is going to save. Now I see this is becoming a more strategic and focused effort. I am so excited. So that's why I said, well, let me just throw a couple of my old bones in for a little bit, but and also it's just fun for me to beat up on Ashish sometimes. And so I started, let me just say, so after I went through learning Fortran and I put away, it was called data processing then, I went away from it because I didn't know what it was that I even learned, but it was the teacher was, ahead of his time because he put 5 of us in a room, a key punch machine. I know I'm saying all this stuff, you go like, oh my God, is she still alive? And gave us projects, and he said, you get grades as, your grade comes as the whole class. So the first thing we learned is how to work as a team. Figured out who had what strength, and you do that, and and then we put it all together, and we did magnificent. And for years, even when I worked for IBM for a short period, I met people who actually still went through that course. So he kept it going for quite a long time, maybe about 20 years. So my really in-depth work with COBOL started in Connecticut, of all, of course. And the Life and Casualty. I think they're CBS now. I don't know who they are. They keep changing their name. And that was a big data pool. And that was a lot of crunching the numbers. You know, that was insurance. In fact, they were multi-line at that time. And so, and they had their own computer school. A lot of, in the beginning, back in the 80s and 70s, a lot of the corporations had their own computer schools. And so it was learning with your job on the line. So it was a very interesting environment. You either learn this or you fired. So there was a whole lot of all-night working and things like that. A lot of things was always get it right or you're fired. And so it made for a very focused environment to work in, but we enjoyed it for some reason. So that's when I got into COBOL. First COBOL was COBOL 84 or something, or one of those numbers. You know, they used to name it the compiler after the year that it was released. And then we were running our COBOL assembler. So a lot of things were in maps. We lived with dumps, and we went with ASCII. No, I'm sorry, we didn't get ASCII later. We lived with Epsobic. So it was more of a scientific job, not very conversational, not a lot of using each other's knowledge. And so, you know, we just moved on. All of a sudden they realized, oh, maybe it'd be better if we could put some indexes on this data and make it easier to read and access. So then, you know, we got that thing where we went through learning VSAM, which now when you look at it, when I build data frames and things like that, and I go like, no, VSAM was not easy. But we thought it was easier because anything is easier than assembler. Work my way through that, and then all of a sudden I was tasked with helping the bond investment department to evaluate software companies. And just the idea of using someone else's code was just not what we did. But I did it, and I found out there were value in software companies. So once I left Edna, that's what I did. I went into the software company, different companies I worked for, and the code got easier and easier. Once you got a good presentation manager, something that we didn't start off with beautiful screens and websites and things like that. Once you got that and you had other pictures in your mind of what you're doing and how the data moved around and seeing things move around or highlighting things, I think it became that we could think more than be constricted with all the like those all that I saw, those Ivy Jenners and all that on those t-shirts. A lot of those utilities were crazy, and JCL was totally crazy. Oh, why is that shit? Sorry about that. I don't know if you guys can see it, but all of a sudden I got word in it. Okay. All right. So now I'm mixing, going across platforms. I even spent early time at ERP. I worked with a company that was one of the, it was called Engineering. I don't know. It was a company called Knowledgeware. I worked at that software company, and we had the idea, and we even did natural language. We had just started a natural language project, but we just, technology people weren't good business managers. It was like two different sides of our brains, and so that went away. I moved on from there and went into working for a telephone company, and that telephone company, we did COBOL and we did VSAM, and then we just kept on moving. And finally, we got to, you call it SQL, I call it SQL. I try to do all those acronyms, and I call CICS, I try to call it KICS. But the point is, once the knowledge shared, the tools became, the tools we had became shareable tools, and the thoughts were based on that. Two heads are better than one, and we really got some good stuff. And so I did all that. I suffered through Y2K. I realized I did Y2K in the bunker in New York City. That was fun and not fun, because we were working like 12-hour shifts, so we were just terrified of what was going to happen. Well, can't tell what happened, because I'm not going to have the DOJ come after me. So, but it was interesting. It was a bit of a burnout. So I spent a lot of days in Manhattan trying to figure out who I was and what was I doing. And then, of course, right after, not too long after that, we had the building that was in front of IBM was the one of the World Trade Center's buildings. And we were at work, and all of a sudden, like the ground shook. But we just thought it was just a regular construction, and we were still in there. We didn't realize that the building that was outside was not there anymore. So that was also interesting. It shows how when you're coding, you're not really on this earth. And so I've had a lot of those experiences. Spent some time in the Chicago public school system working with them. So I've seen technology from the very well managed to the I don't know why they're doing this managed. And some people want to be involved, and then sometimes they let the vendor take over. So a lot of that. So I worked on all types of software that mostly doesn't exist anymore. But the thing that still exists besides JCL is COBOL. It's just amazing. So I journey over to, okay, let me look at this. And it was amazing. So first it started with Zowe, and I was like, this is too hard to install. I can't stand it. Finally, once I got it going, it was just quite a nice platform to work on. It's like, I could have really been good if I had done this. Because I do have something I'm going to tell you before I take a breath and stop talking. But Zowe was very good to work with, and I really appreciate it. I mean, not that ISPF was that, ISPF, when it was the latest thing, it was the latest thing, okay? And I think everything is the latest thing when it's the latest thing. So I really like this now, that I have this palette of tools that I can get to right there. You just bring the extensions in. I really, really like that. Because before we'd have to, it wasn't splitting up the screens. You had a lot of journeys, maybe remember to come out of this and go into this and then come back to follow me. It was a lot of moving, picking up stuff and doing a lot of mental work. It was a lot of extra mental work. And this way you get to do the work and you get to know if your work is any good. So finally, I'm going to take a breath. This is a person sometimes that didn't talk for a whole week, but now, because you know what I did? I did MQ series. I became an MQ series instructor. I forgot to tell you I did that. So MQ series was kind of new. Somehow they grabbed me and said, you could do this. It's like, what? Okay. So I did MQ series. I taught MQ series right as the buildings were falling down. So it became very interesting because I had to teach MQ series, but people would come to my class and not want to know the COBOL version of MQ series. They wanted the Java, MQ series type things. So I had to make mirrors of everything I did. But that's another point I want to make. A lot of technology mirrors, we still think, in the same paradigm. So it's just, the code might be different, but the thinking is similar. You're going to have an object, you're going to do something to it, and then you're going to expect the result. And so now I'm getting ready to end. I'm almost to the check COBOL. Love it. Because the number one thing is the story about the Saturday that I compiled a program. I didn't say I was the best, okay? I compiled a program 60 times to get it correct. Okay, but I got it correct and I stuck with it. That would never happen if I had used check COBOL, because I would have had it in smaller pieces and I would have been able to go through the different stages you know, of the act, assert. I think I got it backwards. The act, assert, and whatever. The three things that you have to do. And so that's a good thing. And I guess if I compiled this 60 times, you know what I did? I ran JCL. I hit the mainframe that many times. I could have saved the company a lot of money, and I totally could have saved myself the embarrassment. Monday morning, the VP of technology came up to me and asked me, what was I doing on Saturday? So a lot of times, you know, the people the system programs would turn you in if you did something. And I have also erased libraries too, right at the time that they were getting ready to do the release library for the software. I've erased that too. So that is me. And now we're at Check COBOL, and I'm liking that because I see where it will give you a greater understanding of actually what you're doing in your program. Because I still think that that common business language is a language, and that's how I always, when I would get into a hole, that's how I would get myself out to say, if I'm talking to this CPU, what am I telling it to do? And that's when I would find out, what did I move that in there for? That's the wrong value, and things like that. So, and the last thing I'm gonna tell you, the hardest thing I've ever had to do was, and I laughed when I saw that COBOL was working storage. That was the biggest concept. I was like, well, what is this extra stuff over here for? Because everything is not just, my idea was just input, processing, output. Everything that you need for the program is not always something you're gonna bring in. It always be sitting there, where you know, you don't need to send pi in every time you want to use that. Okay, so that's enough of it. I'm done.
You know, I will admit, it's a pleasure meeting you, Lezlie, and especially someone that understands the archaeological dig of technology. I love hearing about this because you also brought up something. By the way, you look very young. I'll say that too. And I'll let you know that one thing that you said to me, you understand this archaeological dig, and you told me about the organizational cultural stories about the fact that learning in the corporate culture was like, it's swim or die. And it's kind of like, oh my goodness, in today's world, because of that archaeological dig and what the young people have to grow up in, the learning paradigm has got to be totally different. So you began to speak to that. And I could tell you spoke to it like things have to change. And I love that comment. Absolutely love that comment. I think you're right on.
Thank you, Paul. It's lonely out here.
And you know, something you mentioned struck me. You actually said you viewed writing a program as, you know, using the CPU. I've never actually using the CPU, and how well do you use it? I've actually never thought of it like that, you know, so that's another really good point you make, and something that all programmers can think about as well, right? When you're writing code, and also the fun story of how sometimes the CIS Progs turned you in. That's always a fun conversation to have between application developers and CIS Progs. And the reason I'm mentioning it is we often talk about it too within our own TSC team here, the team that is here having this conversation with you. But Lezlie, I mean, you talked a little about Java and also your experience with MQ series and how you've been an instructor, and that's when you mentioned Java. So I take it you're, you know Java, and you've talked a little when we've had offline conversations about some of the scripting languages. And of course, you come with a lot of experience and expertise with COBOL and also Fortran. So if you were to sort of lay out, you know, the programming languages, and how do you see, you know, the different languages, because these are always conversations. And recently there was a champion IBM Z student who's also an IBM Z champion. She hosted a debate, I want to call it, of COBOL versus Java, right? So that's always a debate. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of these languages, and how do you weigh one versus the other? Your thoughts on that?
Well, the only issue I have with Java is that, because even, okay, so Java and C, that was a mind change. That was a total mind change for me. Because I feel like it's easier to look at your coding as more so, I don't know where the word coding came from, because I thought of it as a language. I always thought that I was communicating with a CPU. And it didn't, I thought it didn't do anything until I tell it to do something. And we could have a long conversation about the AI and supervised data and, the unsupervised data. You have to go to Starbucks to hear that. But I'm tiny and a little bit opinionated, because I have done my time. I have missed summers, I have missed Christmas, but that's enough of my life. So I still like the way, because COBOL, we were looking at something in the COBOL check, and we were looking at a test, and we were looking at the move. So that means something to me. In Java, it's too much like that Fortran. It's just like 1 or 2 steps away from assembly, where you're using registers and symbols, and you've got to remember things. If I say I'm moving, especially if I code my fields correctly in my records, if I make them relevant, and I don't get lazy and just call it A, it communicates with my brain. I can follow that. I think with the Java and encapsulation, okay, all that is good. I will say that, but it's just not, it's not always clear to me where I am. I have a whole list over there. I have so many computers. IBM was really good at letting you have, I don't know if they still do it. They let you have computer books. I have a library, unlimited computer books, every subject you want. Just thought I'd mention. So don't tell them I have the books, because I don't want to send somebody to come get my books. But I don't know, Java is very efficient. It runs faster. It doesn't use as many resources, and it's portable. I will say that. We have now started making COBOL portable. Once you get to the point where COBOL no longer has to live in, in a world where it's a simpler COBOL, I think that the popularity of COBOL, the understanding of COBOL, it's so close to language to me that I can't see it really becoming something to use. I think it was our mystique that made people shy away from it. I don't know how you could use one of the other languages and not. It's kind of like my difference between SQL and vSAN. I'm on the SQL side. Oh yeah, and then all those tables in CIS, who could remember? I mean, it makes sense on paper, but coding all that stuff, it's just too much. So that means instead of CIS, I'm more
And Lezlie, you said something about Java that resonated with me. And I think you made the comment, I do not know where I am sometimes. Well, I think the comment you made, and you know what? That is one reason I had a problem with Java. And I learned about this from Linus Torvalds, who built Linux. And it turns out that Java is not really a control flow or procedural language, because that's how I think, control flow and procedural. And Java is kind of like all this magic happens. And the first time I would read a Java book, they say, okay, you've got a farm. The farm's got cattle, or the farm's got livestock. The type of livestock is chickens and cows. I'm going, what does that have to do with programming? And they think, oh, you got to think objects, not control flow. No wonder I'm confused. And so it's a totally different paradigm.
Yeah.
But when you said, I don't know where I am in Java, I was thinking, yeah, I've been there before, in coding in Java. I don't know where I am, because you're not supposed to know sometimes. Just all this magic is happening.
Right. And the data is, I can't get that to come to my mind. And the data has like 2 definitions.
Yeah, there's the inheritance and all kinds of fancy words for the data.
Logo is, you know, and then when you get into encapsulation, okay, well, that's good because then I don't have to recode things. But that borrow, it's like borrowing from the bank when you really don't have money. I mean,
And I will share something with you. When Sudarshan was talking about this COBOL versus Java debate they had, and I actually listened to the replay, and here's what was interesting. So COBOL, as you know, does financial mathematics extremely well. And a very, very top-notch Java person was on there and said, well, we might be able to get Java to do the almost close precision work that COBOL does with financial mathematics, but you've got to be a really, really good Java programmer. It's kind of like, well, bingo, you know, because it's too easy to make mistakes in financial mathematics.
How fast do you want it? I mean, we're all good if you just leave it. I mean, okay, that's the way I would. If you leave me, I'll get it right. But I did a quick little application, first they were called programs back then, for the bond people, for the bond investors to scope out which bonds they want every day, and I use COBOL. Now, but I did have a problem one time when I was working on a software company, and I was one of those people, you know how you do a calculation and end up those pennies left over? And everybody was saying, you got to get that out of suspense. I couldn't get it out in COBOL. I couldn't. So you're right, I can't, there's precision and there's precision. Okay, so money, I would take Java, but like I said, okay, I could put I told myself I could put it in Fortran, but they said nobody in this building knows Fortran. You got to make it work with COBOL. So that's what I was telling She's everybody's not so nice. I was bothering him with that. It's like, you know, sometimes you're gonna have to stay in there. So I think people have better personalities now.
Yeah, and then I can tell you in Fortran too, because I go back a ways, and the first thing that happens in Fortran, if you don't have a giant word size, like on a supercomputer, like a 60-bit word, then to do a present value of annuity equation, you got to start doing double byte precision in Fortran. And as you know, it's kind of like, oh, you got to be a little bit, you got to know what you're doing in Fortran. For COBOL, okay, I'll handle it for you. You know, it's.
Well, you'll say rounded.
Yeah, exactly. And tell me if you're truncating anything, please.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So, all right. You know what else they probably said something about is our margins in the 80 character line and the 72 to 80, 12. And I told him, I said, it just becomes natural. I said, somehow you see it. I think nobody else does that. And the Python was crazy because with Python, it's like, do you know how much code is behind this one little word list? And it's like, so if anything is wrong, you're never going to get it. You're not going to get it out. Python, I loved, had a great time with that. Made Jupyter notebooks. Almost, I did the science class for IBM, but I never finished the capstone because I was so burnt out after doing all the classes. Like, I'll get back to that later. But, you know, we're at a point now. So we're at the point where I think we can now weed out the good stuff and the bad stuff and put it all together. That's my dream. What do I know? I have 7 cats on the back porch.
Hey, Leslie, I have a question for you. It's just so lovely sitting back listening to you. I could do this all day long. It's wonderful having your history. So just a quick question about going forward, what you think the sort of future is. So I talked to quite a lot of companies who are using COBOL, and they're worried about a couple of things. First of all, they're worried about, can they fit it into like modern DevOps? And you talked about COBOL Check, and I think Rune Christensen, who's very much involved with that, is one of the people here. So maybe, you know, modern DevOps, shift left testing, do things a bit more agile, make the mainframe less special. So people who are comfortable with other tools like GitHub or GitLabs and Bitbucket or Visual Studio Code, you know, when they come to a COBOL environment, they don't have to deal with punch cards or ISPF or or things like that. I wonder if you could talk to that and what role we can all help to play in that. You know, what are the right steps and also the wrong steps that we could take?
Okay, first of all, before you say the word GitHub to me, you have to say the word PanBelay.
Okay.
Yeah, PanBelay was GitHub when I was young, so it just, yeah. So I'm just saying, it's, come on now. I still don't feel like we've come up with new ideas. I think we just come up with better ideas. To me, in my simple mind, what's left of it, I don't see everything. I look at my old Fortran book. Well, it's probably got spiders in it. I probably won't pick that up, but I still have it though. But I look at Fortran, I look at Java, I don't see the difference. And I remember I did take a class in Unix, but I didn't follow through on, because I was at So what I'm saying is, we have to have a bridge. I saw when I was at Knowledgeware, we tried to have a bridge where we would try to like normalize everything together. So, if you did something in COBOL, and then you did something in Fortran, and then you did something in C, and then you did something in Java. They tried to come up with a bridge to bring all that together. Because it's, I don't know how far modernization goes, but I don't know how you just wipe out a bunch of functionality in those COBOL programs.
And Mike, what Leslie's saying resonates with me. And she invoked the PanBelay word, Mike, that your company owns. So maybe you can help here. Oh, Mike Bauer, PanBelay was wonderful. So Mike, help me with this. She's got a great point. PanBelay was wonderful. So do we throw it away?
No, I mean, I would say you integrate and expand.
That's
So
what Leslie's trying to say, I think.
yeah, I mean, one of our, not to go into a conversation around Endeavor, but that's one of the strategies. So Endeavor is our flagship product for source code management, software change management on the mainframe. And it's not a use GitHub instead, it's a integrate GitHub with conversation. So folks who are familiar using, typical Endeavor on the mainframe, they can continue doing that and leveraging those tools, while the folks who are more familiar with GitHub can open pull requests and work with GitHub more directly. So it's definitely, and I've really seen that in general within the industry since the emergence of REST APIs on the platform. And then Zowe, of course, is a layer on top of those REST APIs. But being able to, drive activity on the mainframe, drive activity on ZOS from the distributed world, and being able to combine the best of both worlds. For example, I'm very familiar with Jenkins as a CI orchestration tool. So now, and you mentioned, COBOL Check. If I want to drive activities on mainframe from my Jenkins environment, because of Zowe, because of REST APIs, I can now easily achieve that. And really, if you have an application that spans, a hybrid environment where you have front end components maybe on distributed, back end components on the mainframe, you can really combine all the processes related to software development in a single pipeline.
Yeah, and I love that she invoked the PanBelay word. So just out of curiosity, does PanBelay get rolled into Endeavor, or is there still a PanBelay?
There's still a PanBelay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that she invoked the PanBelay word. It brought back a lot of memories for me.
I had a question sort of related to this. Maybe it's a slightly new topic. But you mentioned how, when folks were first starting on COBOL, and I'd say even today, there's not a lot of sharing of code, or maybe a lot of automated piece parts where folks are really reinventing the wheel in different cases. And you mentioned you had familiarity with Python, but also like a lot of modern languages, Python, Java, Node. A couple aspects of them. One, they have registries where you can pull code from, and so you don't have to reinvent those wheels and you can easily share code. And two, you have GitHub where you can share scripts and different things with each other. I was wondering, in terms of COBOL, a lot of that we're dealing with proprietary code. It's not going to be necessarily open source. But I was wondering if you had any experience where companies applied the concept of what is termed inner source. It's the idea of applying open source concepts to proprietary code, but just within an organization, so that different teams developing COBOL applications within an organization could share easily what they're working on. I didn't know if you saw any of that in your industry experience, or each programmer, each team was more or less isolated, and maybe that's a problem we could focus on solving.
That is the problem. I think it's better now because everyone expects to do what just as you said, go somewhere and get some code and use that. The only issue I have with that is I want you to know it's not that easy. I want the coders to know they have a responsibility. It's not that easy, and you cannot be that cavalier about pulling in code off of these places that they have them where you can pull the code in and then pouring in some unsupervised data and saying to yourself, oh, AI went crazy by itself. You have no idea who you brought in. That's like letting people in your house that you really don't know. They knew your address, so you let them in.
Oh, I'd say to that point, like in the distributed ecosystem, when folks are developing these applications and pulling in these dependencies, we've seen an emergence of best practices around software supply chain security, for example, making sure you're only using code that has good provenance, as well as supported, et cetera, to try to combat the risk. There's certainly been recent events. There was the Log4j vulnerability, et cetera, where a lot of applications were built on still highly supported infrastructure, but then there was a problem. So I'm not necessarily saying we would do the same thing for COBOL, like in the open world, but I'm wondering, like within an organization, like that being the bounds, if there would be ways to share COBOL code, just like internally, if I was working on a proprietary project related to in any other language, Java or what have you, I could share that with colleagues through GitHub. We do similar things actually with mainframe code, with some of the pieces I mentioned earlier, like Bridge for Git, working with both, or even like we're all working in Endeavor. But the idea of, I was just wondering in the industry, if it was that teams were more isolated, or if there was this sharing of COBOL code across an organization.
Yeah, well, sharing would be good. Truly, we found that out when we did Y2K. When you start, because first of all, there's not enough of being able to read code. That skill is not there. Of course, I have 100 stories about that. Yeah, it's hard. But and that's probably more important than writing code, is to read code. But if there wasn't some place where it all can sit in this library repository, that some type of certification of it, or somebody stands behind it and says, yes, this has got a AAA rating. Okay, maybe that. If it has a rating based on all the criteria that it was tested for and scrubbed and made sure it didn't have any secret things in it, and the people who did this knew how to read code, I go for that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, no, don't reinvent the wheel. I do like the fact that we do have some, like I said, I like the idea of, if you're going to unit test, do not waste my time. Oh, we got to already have something for you to use. Fine, use it. Then I know that it's been unit tested correctly. So that if something happens and you have to fix it, at least there's somewhere that explains what's going on, and this variable does this to this piece of data and things like that. The number is, it has to roll through 12 times to make sure it gets all the months of the year. Yeah, that's a big project. But there should be a repository with certified coding. That's keep you guys all day. I can talk about this. I used to talk for hours.
And guess what? We are coming up
I
on the
know you guys gotta get back to work.
we are actually coming up on the last couple of minutes of our conversation here, you know. So I just wanted to, Lezlie, any words of advice that you might have for our listeners, especially the younger, you know, next generation students who are learning programming, who are coding, and, you know, what kind of, what is that one piece of advice that you would like to share with them? I did take down a few that you already, you know, through the conversation have mentioned, but.
You know what? Try to understand, no matter what language you use, that you should have you have an explicit connection with what you're doing. I mean, that you should know where the data is going. And that was my, not that I love Python, because I was able to create things fast, and I did graphs and all that. So I had a ball with all that stuff. Netplot and all those things. And the thing that does the longitude and latitude, that was great too. Foursquare. But make sure you understand where your data is going, what it's doing, when is it picking up, because you don't want to end up, I'm going to end with this. You don't want to end up with a grand total that's correct and a subtotal that's incorrect. She should tell you that story, because I beat him up with that.
Yeah.
Sudarshana, Rune has a question out there, just let you know.
Yes. Yep, I just caught that. So Lezlie, as you know, Rune leads our COBOL Check project, and he's that's the project that we are integrating into our COBOL course, right? That's the summer mentorship program that you're helping and leading, mentoring Ashish. So Rune has a question, and he basically said, thank you for your enthusiasm about COBOL Check. Is there anything that you see is missing in COBOL Check, and how can we improve it? So yeah, that was the question. And I know we also wanted to meet with him and learn more. So, but I'll let you address that.
Because I'm just understanding. See, I finally sat down and did the nuts and bolts, because I am an old school programmer. I think I know everything. So I looked at COBOL Check and worked through it and imagined what was going on. I was thinking it was mainline there, and it was living by the main line. I don't know yet. I need some more time with COBOL Check.
Got it.
I just understand that it happens before you go to the compiler, before you start burning them CPU minutes. Those things are expensive. I forgot what they were. So I used to know how much it was, because they you even got charged with that. If your application was grinding down too many CPU hours, you had to fix it. So yeah, I'm now being very amazed by it, very happy with it. And it's giving you that clear conversation about what you're doing. I know, I still think I'm having a conversation with the CPU.
Yep.
So that was actually a very good answer, because she's thinking like a customer that sometimes has to pay the bills. And so what you just said is COBOL Check can help reduce my cost of doing business, if I heard her right.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was always going for the bonus. So, you know, making your apps, you know, I had an app that did the gas bills in Atlanta. It ran for 3 days. I was like, wait, something's wrong. And what it was is unit of work was turned down too low in the SQL. I didn't know that. Bill told me. So one of the people on my team said, it's down too low. So this is
right. This was absolutely fantastic. It was so wonderful listening to you and, you know, your journey, and how you absolutely have, you know, embraced Zowe and VS Code, the programming course, the way we have it, with that, you know, more of a modern UI and interface that students these days, learners, developers in general, as Mike pointed out, the distributed world also has, and trying to sort of bridge the term you used as well, right, Lezlie? create those bridges so that, you know, we are absolutely able to bring COBOL, make it easier to learn, make it easier to work with. And in that spirit, that's what we're working on for our summer project as well, mentorship project, is integrating COBOL Check so that we can further sort of bring that DevOps and CI/CD pipeline kind of thought process into COBOL development, and COBOL Check being that really good tool that can weave into being that unit testing, that first step of testing tool. So with that, I would like to say thank you everyone for attending our 2Q webinar. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. The replay will be available soon if you missed it. And you can always reach out and catch us on our GitHub for the COBOL Programming Course, and, you know, share any issues you see with the course or raise a PR. We are always looking to our community and our learner community and the members to, you know, come back and contribute, just like Lezlie has, from consumer to contributor. Thank you so much, Lezlie, for being here with us today, and bye everyone.
Thanks
Thank you, Lezlie.
Thanks, Lezlie. It was awesome. You're a legend.
Bye.